Why is it that when Africans dare to speak, they are met with bullets instead of dialogue? Why is a cry for dignity answered with starvation, and a demand for truth crushed beneath boots and armored tanks? For too long, the voices of Africa have been buried under rubble, drowned by gunfire, and starved into silence. From Congo to Cameroon, Ethiopia to Senegal, and now Côte d'Ivoire. Ivory Coast, once a beacon of West African promise, has become a puppet stage where the strings are pulled from Paris. For decades, France has held the country hostage through economic chokeholds like the CFA franc, through military interventions disguised as peacekeeping, and through leaders groomed to protect foreign interests, not Ivorian lives. Cocoa-rich, gold-rich, oil-rich, yet the people remain poor, fractured, and forgotten. But something shifted in Abidjan. If you want to understand the true story behind these struggles and hear the voices that often go unheard, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover the realities shaping Africa's future. It began in the dead of night. The familiar hum of city life stilled, lights sputtered, then died. Entire districts plunged into darkness, then gunfire. First far off, then closer, then everywhere. Screams tore through narrow streets. Armored vehicles rumbled past shuttered shops. Phone lines were dead. The internet vanished. People huddled in fear, clutching their children, locking their doors, asking the one question no one dared say aloud. Where is President Ouattara? No one knew. But one woman claimed she did. Just hours before the blackout, she had posted a single tweet, cryptic, chilling, and precise. By midnight, the sky over Abidjan will no longer belong to the people. Ouattara has fled. France is coming for her pound of flesh. IMAS. It had gone almost unnoticed until the chaos began. Then it spread like wildfire. Retweeted, reposted, whispered in dark rooms and on broken radios. Who was this woman? How did she know? And more urgently, what does she know that the world doesn't? 3 cryptic sentences. From a barely followed account, posted from a location tagged in Yapugan. At first, no one took it seriously. Twitter was full of alarmists, especially during tense times. But as the gunfire grew louder and the internet faded to black, that tweet became more than a warning. It became a prophecy. Who was AS? Some said she was a former military insider. Others insisted she was a spiritualist or prophetess who had once been part of the president's extended family, banished years ago for predicting political disaster. There were rumors she had warned Ouattara himself and had been laughed out of the palace. But now the city was burning, and suddenly no one was laughing. In one viral video filmed just before the blackout, a group of university students huddled around a battery-powered radio. The reporter was breathless. Shots near plateau. A convoy was seen leaving the presidential villa. No official word. Repeat, no official word. No one had seen the president in hours. And then, just like that, the radio fell silent. Africa has seen this before, but tonight felt different. As if history wasn't repeating, it was evolving. The people weren't afraid this time. They were watching, waiting, hoping. Could it be that the rumors were true? Back online, those who still had VPN access were piecing together scraps of information. The tweet, the blackout, the sudden military presence. A social media user from Buwake posted, "This is not a coup. This is a reckoning." The line was retweeted thousands of times before the user vanished. But through all the noise and speculation, one truth stood tall: someone saw this coming, and nobody believed her. Until now. Could a single woman have predicted the fall of a West African giant? Was this coup a spontaneous explosion or the final act of a long-hidden plan? Keep watching. The truth is darker than fiction. The facts are frightening enough, but what we don't know is what truly haunts us. Officially, there has been no confirmed coup in Côte d'Ivoire. The government spokesperson called the recent gunfire a minor misunderstanding. The national TV station replayed cultural music videos on loop. But the streets of Abidjan told a different story, one of fear, confusion, and silence. Verified reports indicated that internet connectivity across major regions like Abidjan, Yamoussoukro, and Bouake was severely restricted. Cybersecurity analysts noted mass outages around midnight, coinciding with troop movement in and out of key government installations. Residents reported low-flying helicopters and heavily armed soldiers stationed at major roadblocks. And then there were the confirmed deaths. 3 high-ranking military officials found dead under unclear circumstances, including General Marcel Degaut, a key figure in national security. The official cause of death, heart failure. But photos that leaked on Telegram told a more violent story. Amidst this chilling uncertainty, enter the speculative web of theories that have taken over Pan-African digital spaces. One theory centers on a secret alliance between disillusioned Ivorian officers and sympathetic members of Burkina Faso's military. Supposed meetings were said to have taken place months earlier in a safe house along the northern border, where plans were laid to restore African integrity and remove pro-Western elements in power. Another theory points to the presence of a controversial U.S. military base, allegedly established just 130 kilometers from the Burkina border. Critics, particularly from Mali and Burkina Faso, saw it as a provocation, a NATO-backed move to suppress the rise of Pan-African leadership in the Sahel. Could Ouattara have knowingly invited foreign soldiers onto African soil, compromising national sovereignty? And then there's the woman, A.S., whose tweet warned of this exact event. Some believe she's Astou Seri, a former intelligence analyst who vanished from public records after allegedly leaking sensitive information about regional alliances. Others argue she's a spiritualist, a modern-day griot channeling ancestral messages. What's undeniable is that her tweet was posted before the internet blackout and before the first reports of violence. Could this mean she had insider knowledge? Or was she just another digital prophet, her words twisted by coincidence? It's here that our story walks the tightrope between fact and fiction, possibility and paranoia. While no official coup has been declared, too many signs point to an undercurrent of organized rebellion with roots deeper than most understand. But even more chilling is the question, why? Is this truly about national sovereignty or a deeper reckoning with Africa's place in a world still pulling its strings from the outside? One thing is clear: this is not just a crisis in Ivory Coast. It is a signal, a shift, a storm gathering across the Sahel. And if the whispers are true, the next domino might already be shaking. Côte d'Ivoire is not an island. Her tremors shake the entire Sahel. As political currents rage through the Sahel and echo into the Gulf of Guinea, the question is no longer whether the Ivory Coast stands at a crossroads, it's whether the entire region is about to experience a historical transformation. The events unfolding in Côte d'Ivoire cannot be isolated from the broader political, economic, and ideological upheavals reverberating across West Africa and beyond. The rise of the Alliance of Sahel States, AIS, forged in the aftermath of the military takeovers in Mali, 2021, Burkina Faso, 2022, and Niger, 2023, marked a definitive break from the Western-aligned post-colonial status quo. These were not haphazard grabs for power, they were coordinated responses to what many perceived as systemic failures of governance and sovereignty under global capitalism and neocolonialism. AIS was more than a strategic alliance, it became a philosophy. Its key figures, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Colonel Assimi Goïta, and General Abdourahmane Tiani, presented a new archetype of African leadership, youthful, assertive, and deeply critical of Western interference. They did not merely denounce ECOWAS but actively repositioned the region's geopolitical axis. When they announced the formation of a joint military force and declared ECOWAS irrelevant, the move wasn't just symbolic, it was a recalibration. In particular, Burkina Faso under Traoré embraced an ideology of total Pan-African liberation. Schools began revising colonial curricula, foreign media licenses were revoked, and domestic industries were prioritized. These ideological shocks inspired widespread debate in Ivory Coast, where a disillusioned youth population began to question whether their leaders had sacrificed sovereignty for short-term donor funding and foreign military protection. Rumors began swirling in late 2023 when whistleblower documents suggested the construction of a U.S. drone surveillance facility in northern Côte d'Ivoire. Though officially framed as a counter-terrorism initiative, the base near Korhogo raised alarms among AIs and local nationalists alike. Despite denials from President Alassane Ouattara's administration, satellite imagery analyzed by independent journalists showed unmistakable indicators of a high-tech military installation. Reacting swiftly, AI's leaders condemned what they termed imperialist infiltration. Captain Traoré, with his usual rhetorical fire, declared, "You cannot invite wolves to guard the sheep." Ivory Coast is not just betraying its own people, it is endangering all of Africa. That speech, widely circulated on WhatsApp, TikTok, and Telegram, ignited protests across Ivorian cities. Demonstrators, many of them young, unemployed, or university students, took to the streets. Their chants were not just anti-government, they were anti-system. Graffiti appeared across Abidjan reading, "No to Ouattara's America. Africa will defend herself. French out, Yankees out." These acts were not orchestrated by political parties, but by a growing movement, horizontal, decentralized, and digital first. Ivory Coast has long been the crown jewel of France's post-colonial influence in West Africa. With lucrative cocoa exports, strategic Atlantic ports, and a relatively stable political environment, it served as a buffer zone between rising regional instability and French economic interests. But France's aura of invincibility began to crack when Mali expelled its troops and switched to Russian military assistance. Burkina Faso and Niger followed, torching symbols of French authority and arresting Western-linked NGOs. What once appeared as fringe behavior morphed into a regional consensus. In Abidjan, Ouattara doubled down on ties with France, securing more military aid and renewing security agreements. But this may have backfired. The more France leaned in, the more discontent brewed within Ivorian ranks, both military and civilian. There are now credible reports that French advisors are stationed within strategic security facilities in Abidjan. Meanwhile, AES-aligned social media pages suggest that French surveillance has helped neutralize anti-government organizers. To many Ivorian nationalists, France is not an ally but an occupier. The Ivorian military, though publicly aligned with the presidency, is internally fractured. Unlike older officers trained during the post-Civil War Reconstruction era, younger soldiers have undergone regional missions and developed Pan-African camaraderie with counterparts from Mali, Burkina Faso, and even Guinea. Colonel Timoko Coulibaly emerged as a key figure within this dynamic. Once a star cadet, Coulibaly reportedly became disillusioned with elite privileges and foreign military dependency. Insiders describe him as a quiet strategist, someone who believes Africa's problems can only be solved by Africans. He allegedly went underground months before unrest began to spike. According to leaked audio from a closed-door security meeting, Coulibaly warned, "Every drone that flies over our land without our consent is a colonial echo. We must reclaim our skies, our economy, and our future." Now, whispers of his involvement in sabotaging military communications and redirecting weapons caches are gaining traction. Whether myth or truth, his name has become a rallying cry, especially among mid-level officers and barracks youths. Once hailed as Africa's model of regional unity, ECOWAS now finds itself increasingly irrelevant. Its threat of military intervention in Niger proved hollow, exposing deep divisions among member states. Nigeria is overburdened with economic woes and internal security crises. Ghana, once a beacon of stability, faces currency devaluation and youth unrest. In this climate, Ivory Coast's unrest poses a dire question: can ECOWAS survive another failed intervention? Sources suggest that some ECOWAS officials now privately acknowledge the legitimacy of the grievances raised by EAS and its sympathizers. Publicly, they cling to the narrative of constitutional order. But behind closed doors, there's growing awareness that the youth no longer accept that order. The coup in Abidjan, if successful, would shatter ECOWAS's remaining credibility and possibly lead to a domino withdrawal of other states. The regional body would have to reinvent itself or risk collapse. Global responses have ranged from vague concern to strategic silence. The U.S., heavily invested in maritime surveillance in the Gulf of Guinea, is particularly rattled. Ivory Coast was supposed to become its launchpad for drone operations against transnational terrorist threats in the Sahel and piracy in the Atlantic. Losing Ivory Coast would mean reconfiguring the entire Gulf defense strategy. France predictably has condemned illegal destabilization efforts, but leaks suggest President Macron's inner circle is bracing for a worst-case scenario, the total ejection of France from Francophone Africa. Meanwhile, China is extending infrastructure loans, quietly offering itself as a neutral development partner to both sides. Russia, emboldened by its growing influence in the Sahel, is allegedly courting Ivorian officers through Wagner-linked intermediaries. Africa, once a passive recipient in Cold War geopolitics, is now an active chessboard where global powers jostle for favor and Africans are learning to play their own hand. In this new ideological battle, digital media is the front line. Influencers like Dr. Africaunity&hope, Kimi Siba, and PLO Lumumba now command massive youth audiences who are disillusioned with traditional elites. Africa for Africans isn't just a hashtag, it's a digital doctrine. Telegram, Signal, and even lesser-known decentralized apps have become hubs for resistance. Activists share live footage, crowdsource legal aid, and even organize neighborhood patrols to guard against security forces. Memes mocking Ouattara trend within minutes. Audio leaks go viral overnight. While mainstream media focuses on state briefings, the real narrative unfolds in memes, voice notes, and citizen journalism. What began as whispers of discontent has grown into a continent-wide roar. Ivory Coast may very well become the tipping point, the lit match that ignites Africa's most decisive geopolitical fire in the 21st century. Whether Ouattara retains power or is overthrown, the underlying conditions will remain: youth alienation, sovereignty debates, and the battle between foreign allegiance and African self-determination. This is more than a coup. It is a referendum on Africa's post-colonial identity. The events unfolding in Abidjan are not isolated. They are part of a narrative that links Niamey, Bamako, Ouagadougou, and potentially even Kinshasa, Nairobi, and Johannesburg. Africa is moving. The only question now is, who will define its next chapter? Pan-Africanist lens, emotional framing, revolutionary intimacy. To tell the African story truthfully, one must bleed with it. What is happening in Côte d'Ivoire is more than politics. It is a wound opening, a reckoning with centuries of betrayal by colonizers, by puppet leaders, by systems that promised freedom but delivered chains in new packaging. And so this story must not be told with cold statistics or sterile policy briefs. It must be told with the fire of those who suffer and survive. From the streets of Abidjan to the dusty roads of Korogo, from the whispers in student dormitories to the chants of women in marketplaces. This is a people's story, and it must be framed as such. The narrative must speak directly to the African heartbeat. That means rejecting Western templates of neutrality that paint liberation as chaos and silence as order. The language must stir the spirit, not just inform but ignite. Let the reader feel the fear in a mother's chest as soldiers pass her door. Let them taste the betrayal in a soldier's throat as he is ordered to suppress his own people. Let them weep with the child who does not understand why the lights never came back on. Use words that breathe in African tongues truth, justice, sovereignty, and dress them in the stories of ordinary people pushed to extraordinary resistance. Côte d'Ivoire is not just an isolated nation in crisis, it is a mirror. A reflection of Guinea's struggle, of Mali's rejection, of Niger's awakening, of Burkina Faso's rage. Through this lens, The Ivorian uprising is not simply a coup in the making, it is the latest verse in Africa's unfinished freedom song. Narratively, the story must connect the dots, show how the Sahel bloc didn't just inspire hope, but legitimized resistance. Frame A's leaders not as military strongmen, but as flawed but fiery symbols of an overdue shift, men who dared to say non to neocolonialism in a world built to punish such defiance. Paint Ivory Coast's youth not as rioters, but as the frontline soldiers of African rebirth, armed not just with stones and tweets, but with a vision for a continent that belongs to its people. Revolution is not theory, it is heartbreak. Let every statistic come with a story. When you say 15 killed in protests, name one. Tell of Amadou, the young university student who handed his mother his textbooks and said, "If I don't return, tell them I tried." When you mention the economic collapse, show Mama AC, who sold peanuts for 20 years only to watch inflation swallow her savings overnight. This approach ensures that the revolution is not romanticized but humanized, because what is at stake is not just sovereignty, but survival. The youth may not control the tanks, but they control the narrative. Twitter, TikTok, Telegram, these are now battlegrounds of memory and meaning. A single viral video can undo weeks of state propaganda. A trending hashtag can gather more protesters than any union. Hashtag Africa for Africans. Hashtag Ivorian Revolution. Hashtag Sahel Solidarity. These are more than slogans, they are digital drums, calling a new generation to consciousness. The narrative must track how these platforms are becoming Africa's newest weapon, not just of communication, but of coordination, education, and solidarity. Interviews, voice notes, journal entries, these must be woven into the storytelling. When possible, include the actual words of those on the ground. Not just analysts or activists, but the boda rider, the market woman, the young soldier conflicted between duty and dignity. This intimacy breaks down the wall between the reader and the revolution. It says, this could be your brother, your country, your fight. Finally, the narrative must end not with uncertainty, but with conviction. Not just a question, but a call. Pan-African story must leave the world not just more informed, but more ready. Ready to ask. Ready to act. Ready to dream of an Africa that finally writes its story in its own ink. Because as the old world cracks and the new one emerges, it will not be those with the biggest bombs who win. It will be those with the bravest pens, the clearest voices, the deepest love for this wounded, rising continent. Ivory Coast stands on the brink of a new era, an awakening fueled by the courage and unity of its people. This is more than a story about politics. It's a story about hope, resilience, and the unstoppable power of a people demanding change. If you found this story inspiring, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to show your support, share it with friends and family to spread the message, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on every twist and turn in this unfolding revolution. We want to hear from you. What do you think will happen next in Ivory Coast? How do you see this movement shaping Africa's future? Drop your comment and theories in the comments below. Let's start a conversation that matters. Together we can witness and amplify the voices of Africa's awakening. Join us on this journey, because the revolution is not just happening on the streets, it's happening right here with all of us.